My ministry classmate was 30 years older than me. I sat in his small apartment, hoping for the wisdom and guidance I had already come to know he might provide. At the time, I was only a few months into theological school and just over a year into my marriage. The world in which I moved was heavy with transition and new ways of being. I was feeling the burden of all of this change, and so was my marriage. The details of the challenges Susan and I were facing don't matter now. I suspect most married couples have endured similar pressures, especially during the early years of their covenant with one another to remain together for better and for worse. I told my friend what I knew, laying before him the mystery of what was happening and the weight of it all, too. He listened patiently. When I was done sharing, a few tears were rolling down my cheeks. Silence hung in the room. And then he spoke with the voice of a grandfather, which he was. He spoke with the perspective of a man who had lived through his own broken marriage, his own disappointments, his own reflections on what life had brought through the circumstances he had chosen and those he had not. He spoke with well-earned confidence that he had something to say that I needed to hear. "Mark," he said, "you have to be strong." More silence. And that was basically it. I know we chatted some more that night, but neither of us really needed to say much more than we already had. I had put my burdens before him, and he had reminded me not only that I could carry them, but that I should, or at least that the covenant I had made with my wife required that I try. He didn't say, "Mark, you have to be rigid." He didn't say you have to be angry. He didn't say you have to be happy. He didn't say you have to be vengeful or oblivious or passive-aggressive or forlorn or committed to pretending that all is well even when it is not. "Mark," he said, "you have to be strong." Still to this day, his words are the best marriage advice I have ever received. Several years later, I was preparing to officiate a wedding for a couple not affiliated with our church. They asked me to preach a homily as part of the ceremony. This was a surprising request, considering I didn't know them all that well, and given that most couples I marry just want the ceremony and nothing but the ceremony. Nevertheless, I agreed. I knew the homily I had to preach. Theirs was an extravagant wedding, held outside in downtown Des Moines. It involved dancers and antique automobiles and stringed instruments. During the wedding, when the time came for my homily, I closed the book from which I had been reading the words of the ceremony, and I spoke from the heart. I told the story of my early days of my own marriage and how my wise friend had offered me guidance that had served me well ever since, guidance that I thought worth sharing with them. When things get tough, I told the couple, as they most certainly will, you have to be strong. That is the covenant you are making today, to be strong together. I sensed by the look in the bride's face as I spoke that maybe I had not offered the homily for which she had hoped. In fact, I thought she looked a little angry standing there in her beautiful dress. I guess I couldn't blame her. Why would I, the hired help, distract from the fairy tale with the truth? I felt bad for raining a bit on this lovely parade, at least until after the service. As I walked away from the revelry, the parents of the bride and groom both went out of their way to pull me aside and to offer their gratitude for the words I had spoken. The dads offered me firm handshakes, the moms big hugs. They knew I had told the truth, and they knew that the truth matters. having kept their covenants for many years through what we all can imagine had been their own challenging times. These parents knew the rewards of being strong. They knew that being strong is what keeping a covenant is all about. As parents wanting the best for their children, they wouldn't seek to inflict a too broad understanding of being strong on this couple, and neither would I. I wouldn't want any married couple to commit to undying confidence in their covenant despite all evidence to the contrary. I wouldn't want them to think that being strong means uncritically accepting abuse or tolerating bad behavior without naming it and calling each other back to the covenant. Being strong does not mean resignation to being trapped in an unhealthy or unsafe situation. The being strong I describe is being willing to honestly assess how the covenant is being lived and whether room exists for the health and growth of those bound in it. The being strong, I suggest, is the very means to the freedom we all deserve. A freedom that comes when we hold ourselves accountable with others to being the kind of people we want to be and living the kind of lives we yearn to live. A few months ago, I presided at a wedding during which the couple was presented with a bell. They were asked to ring it together during the ceremony to celebrate the love and expectations for the future that had brought them to that day. Ding-a-ding-a-ding-a-ding-a-ding-a-ding. And then they were encouraged to keep the bell in their home and to ring it in times of joy and sorrow, to remind one another of this covenant that they had made. It was a lovely ritual. In retrospect, I wish I would have given it more emphasis in the ceremony, for it was perhaps a better way to preach the "you have to be strong" message than anything else shared that day. The bell ritual invited the couple to practice in a tangible way what being strong in covenant really means. The bride and groom were not given individual bells to ring at each other or the world when times get tough. They were given a single bell to share, to ring with each other. When in need of remembering what had brought them to their marriage, to their covenant, they were not invited to ring the bell alone in separate rooms. They were invited to ring it together in good times and in bad. They were invited to hold themselves accountable to a greater shared vision, not just on their wedding day, but in all their shared days to come. When we are in covenant, being strong requires that we together hold the responsibility to remember, to celebrate, even when necessary, to mourn. Being strong means being willing to return in our memory and in our present to the covenant we have made, to the shared vow to travel together to the very best of our ability through all of the ambiguities and disappointments and, yes, even mistakes of our lives together. Sometimes the mistakes we make begin with overly ambitious expectations that we bring when entering the covenant. Are we being realistic in the promises we make? When I was serving as an intern minister, I asked my supervisor if she provided premarital counseling to couples as a component of preparing to officiate their weddings. She shook her head. How on earth, she asked, could I explain the complexities of marriage to couples who are in love? She was only partly kidding, right? I knew what she meant. It can be difficult to fully understand the nature of covenant when the vows are easy to make. The value of a covenant is most evident when things are not easy, when the vows are difficult to sustain. Covenant becomes most important when the heady rush of being in love shifts to the daily discipline of remembering to love. My colleague, Meg Riley, shares that in working with couples as they write their wedding vows, she has refused to support promises that she considers unsustainable. She says she once listened to draft vows from a man who wanted to promise to his beloved, "When you cry, I will wipe away your tears." His fiancée thought it was lovely and beamed at him. "Take it out," Meg says she snapped at the groom. "At least some of the time," she told him, "your wife will be crying because of you and will not want you anywhere near her with a handkerchief." Yeah. Meg's story and her own experiences remind us that being strong in covenant is not being certain of the destination toward which we are traveling or even the path that will take us there. Being strong in covenant is choosing to travel together despite the uncertainties, maybe even because of them, unsure of where we are headed, but knowing that it matters that we be willing to move in directions we might not yet understand or predict. As Wendell Berry has written about the covenant of marriage, we can join one another only by joining the unknown. The union is going where the two of you and the marriage and time and life and history and the world will take it. You do not know the road. You have committed your life to a way. To live a covenant is to be committed not to a destination, but to a way of being together. Let's shift to our church. We who have made a home here in this UU church understand covenant, don't we? For ours is a covenantal faith. Ours is a religion not bound in creed. We are not bound by shared understandings of the holy or even of our final destinations. We are bound by our covenant to travel together, to hold ourselves and each other accountable to preserving that precious freedom for each of us to discern the ultimate as our hearts and minds allow. We are bound in a covenant to the journey of unending revelation and discovery that unfolds when we open ourselves to the possibilities of creative interchange in community. We are bound in covenant to the journey itself as a way of being. When people ask me what the point of our religion is, if we don't all believe in God, I explain that we do not share a creed, but we do share a covenant. And that covenant to travel together through our differences is exactly where our religion finds its meaning and its power. We don't always do it well, but the covenant we make to each other asks that we try. The point of our religion, I say, is our commitment to covenant, to a way of being together. We covenant to affirm and promote the principles of our UU association, promising to one another our mutual care and support. Many UU congregations recite covenants as part of their services. The members of my internship congregation, the Unitarian Church of Evanston, still say together as part of their weekly worship a covenant their minister crafted in 1894. They say together, "Love is the spirit of this church and service is its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, to help one another." In our congregation's weekly services, we share covenantal statements as well. Maybe we could think of them when we say them together as a kind of ringing of the bell of our covenant to one another. Consider the chalice lighting reading in which we call upon our reason and our passion to lead us to be true to ourselves, true to each other, true to what we can together become. We don't name the truth, but we express our intention to pursue it for the good and growth of all. When we say as we extinguish our chalice that we will go from this place open to life, expecting to love, prepared to serve, We don't list specific promises of what life, love, and service will entail. We know they're going to mean different things to each person here. And yet I believe those words are a covenantal statement, because when we say them and we strive in our clumsy ways to live them, we are agreeing that there is a larger purpose to our time together, that we are each responsible to carry that purpose beyond our walls. When we welcome new members, we affirm together the importance of this workshop of common endeavor, a place of comfort and challenge, promising to combine our strength and talents to better shape the meaning of our lives than we could alone. We dedicate our children and promise to offer these young people our caring, wisdom, and trust, and our dedication to building a world worthy of their gifts of life and hope. Through these covenants we share, we invite each other, we could say, to be strong together, to see that our unmet expectations and disappointments are less important than the promises we keep and renew with each other to help build and sustain this community, this place that we yearn to inhabit with our whole selves. We practice leaving space for the unique individuality of our companions, even as we hold ourselves and each other accountable to larger goals of our union, a nurturing of the compassion, humility, and intimate justice so desperately needed in our world today. In this church, in this faith, just as in marriage, we know that we may be disappointed. We know that things will not always go as we expect. We know that we have the right and sometimes the responsibility to leave. But my hope is that through our commitment to being strong in the face of adversity, through our discipline of being disappointed and staying anyway, through our practice of pursuing right relationship with our companions, we will do our part, one relationship at a time, to nurture the peace, freedom, and justice befitting the kind of people we most want to be and the kind of world we most want to see. A world where more of us can more often be true to ourselves, true to each other, true to what we can together become. May it be so.